Omni-man is without a doubt one of the strongest Viltrumites, and possibly even one of the strongest beings in the entire universe. His feats speak for themselves, from gravity-defying momentum to punches that can level even mountains with a single blow. He can decide the fate of entire civilizations in the blink of an eye. With all that power, the possibilities for someone like him are nearly endless, but the reality is more complicated. Let's explore exactly why it would actually suck to be born as Omni-man. Power like his doesn't come without a cost. Every ounce of strength he has was honed and enhanced through a lifetime of violence. Every ability he has was shaped by suffering, conquest, and destruction. His strength did not free him from pain. It ensured he would experience it even intensely. When you live for thousands of years, you experience the slow erosion of everything that makes life worth living. Omni-man, or Nolan Grayson, is a pure-blooded Viltrumite. Born and raised on the planet Viltrum, he has known nothing but domination and ruthlessness. On his planet, the fight began from the very moment he was born. Omni-man was brought up among people who viewed empathy as a weakness and strived tirelessly to eliminate the weakness from their society. Imagine growing up in a world where sympathy is punished and cruelty is praised. That is where Nolan was. He was raised in a society where the only measure of worth was how easily someone could overpower others, and the only reason to live was to further the cause of the Viltrum Empire. For many, this might seem like a nightmare, but for Nolan, it was just everyday life. Omni-man is known to be over 2,000 years old, and for pretty much all his life, he has been sent from planet to planet, committing atrocities and destroying civilizations, all in the name of the greater good. His only reason for being alive was to murder innocents in order to expand the Viltrum Empire. He was turned into a systematic killing machine from birth. How can someone like that possibly make meaningful connections or care for anyone in a real way? To be a powerful Viltrumite is to be either a sociopath by human standards or to live a lonely and fragmented life. And over time, something even worse happens. You stop questioning it. You stop resisting. You stop seeing yourself as an individual. You become exactly what they wanted you to be. A tool, a symbol, a weapon. Not someone who lives, but something that is used. And when that becomes your identity for thousands of years, it becomes almost impossible to separate who you are from what you were created to do. Eventually, as part of his mission, Omni-man was sent to Earth. At first, it was no different from his previous missions. Earth was simply another conquest, another civilization to bring to its knees and put under Viltrumite control. Of course, this seemed way too easy for him. Humans could only seem fragile and primitive to someone like Nolan. He thought that Earthlings were temporary and insignificant. In his eyes, compared to even a single Viltrumite, all of humanity was nothing more than a group of pathetic, fleeting organisms living short, meaningless lives. But over time, he developed a connection with some of these lowly beings. For the first time ever, Omni-man didn't just observe the population he was sent to conquer. He lived among them, and everything changed for good when he became a father. He started feeling love and compassion that he had never felt before. He experienced those emotions for the first time on Earth thanks to his wife Debbie and then their amazing son, Mark. This was something Viltrum had never prepared him for. He had been trained to take over entire planets, but never to belong to one. He had been taught how to destroy families, not how to be part of one. For the first time in his existence, Nolan wasn't acting as a Viltrumite soldier. He was acting as husband and father, and the cognitive dissonance that it caused would slowly begin to tear him apart from the inside after living thousands of years in isolation without emotional attachment or genuine love. He had to learn how to navigate all of that after living without anything like it for over 2 centuries. He didn't see this as a gift. Loving his family was basically a curse, because when the time inevitably came, he would have to abandon everything they'd built and answer the call of duty, which is exactly what happened. When Mark turned 17, he finally got his powers. Nolan, knowing his responsibilities, began the conquest. In one of the most shocking reveals in superhero history, he brutally massacred the Guardians of the Globe, the most powerful superhero team on the planet Earth and the planet's last line of defense. He started training Mark to make him realize his responsibility to the Viltrum Empire, but when Mark found out about his true origins and the purpose of his life, he refused to accept what his father told him. He stood his ground against Nolan, which resulted in one of the most emotional battles between a father-son duo ever witnessed. Omni-Man destroyed the city of Chicago just to show Mark his true power. He used his own son's body to murder thousands of civilians just to prove a point. That point being, human lives are meaningless in the grand scheme of things. Imagine having to beat your own son to the brink of death for the sake of some duty you never even stopped to question. That's what Omni-Man had to endure. By the time he finally saw the error of his ways and abandoned his mission, dozens of planets were destroyed, millions of beings were slaughtered, and Nolan's own family was almost completely destroyed. But what made this moment even more painful was not the physical damage, it was the realization. For the first time in his entire life, Nolan was forced to confront the truth, that everything he believed in might have been wrong, that everything he had done might have been worse than meaningless, but evil and unforgivable. The empire he served for thousands of years did not make him a strong and superior being. It's made him an empty, disgusting monster. After almost killing his son and losing his life on Earth, Nolan was left roaming around in space endlessly for weeks. He finally found his new purpose in the form of leading another species, the Thraxans. Despite having lifespans of less than even humans, Omni-Man grew to deeply care about the Thraxans. He even fathered another son while he lived on their planet. But as fate would have it, Viltrumite soldiers were sent to find Nolan for abandoning his mission on Earth. In a desperate attempt to save the Thraxan race from the wrath of the Viltrumites, Nolan had to beg his first son, Mark, the one he almost obliterated back on Earth, for help saving the Thraxans. But by the time Mark got there, it was too late. Nolan and Mark were forced to fight 3 Viltrumites on Thraxia before they could even prepare, causing immense collateral damage and killing scores of the Thraxans. In an attempt to save his sons and as many Thraxans as possible, Omni-Man let himself be beaten nearly to death and taken in as a prisoner by the enemy Viltrumites. Once they had him, he was allowed to heal back to his full strength, but only so that he could be killed properly, and through all of this, Nolan experienced something else he had never truly felt before: helplessness. Not because he lacked strength, but because he lacked control and the desire to continue. For his entire life, he had been the one in control, the one who decided the fate of others, but now his fate was being decided for him. He was no longer the conqueror, he was the prisoner set to be slaughtered, and he actually thought he deserved it. That's when he met Alan, when he remembered his true power, the responsibility he had to right his many wrongs, and how much he missed his wife on Earth. Omni-Man befriended Alan the alien, and their bond grew stronger as they sat in the prison together. With a little motivational push from Alan, Nolan managed to defeat his executioners. Then he made the decision to join the coalition of planets and stand as an ally in their fight against the cause of the Viltrumite Empire. Finally, he was going to make a positive difference and become an invaluable ally against the evils he once perpetrated himself. In the final battle of the war, the anti-Viltrumite coalition is victorious, destroying the Viltrumite homeworld and scattering their forces, but Nolan was badly wounded by the Viltrumite leader, who secretly relocated the surviving members of his race on Earth, planning to interbreed with humans and covertly rebuild the Empire. Tensions began to mount further when Thrag discovered that Nolan was a descendant of the long-dead Viltrumite king and was thus the rightful heir to the throne. This, of course, started another fierce battle between them. Although Nolan was being overpowered by Thrag, the Viltrumites recognized him as the rightful heir and rallied behind him, forcing Thrag to flee if he wanted to survive. Finally, Nolan was crowned as ruler of the Viltrum Empire, but even as their king, Nolan was not free. Because ruling an empire means carrying the weight of its past. Every life they stole, every world they had destroyed, every decision the Empire had made in the name of their blind and bloody conquest, Nolan was left to address and rectify. He was no longer responsible for his actions alone. He was responsible for the legacy of the entire Viltrumite civilization. Nolan Grayson overlooks the Viltrumites on Earth, seeing how the Viltrumites changed for the better there, and truly took on Earth as their new home. Eventually, the son he bore on Thraxia is killed, and Nolan is deeply impacted by his death. And in the final confrontation between the new Viltrumites and Thrag's army, Nolan is killed by Thrag. With his dying breath and his last words to his remaining son, Mark, Nolan names him as his successor, making him the new official emperor of the Viltrumites. In his final moment, Nolan achieved something he never had before: peace. Instead of being a murderer and a conqueror, he was finally able to act as a loving father and a responsible leader. He could finally be someone who could choose love and empathy over death, destruction, and duty. To say that Nolan has been through a lot is an understatement. In the end, being born as Omni-Man is no gift or privilege. It's more like a prison sentence. He was sentenced to a life where his strength isolated him, his given purpose controlled him, and his whole existence was defined by a mission he never even chose. Everything that makes life meaningful, love, belonging, peace, family, came into conflict with what Nolan was created to do. In the end, Omni-Man was never truly free. Not when he was a soldier, not when he was a father, not even when he was a king. Everything he ever was shaped by forces beyond his control. His story is not the story of a god among men, it is the story of a man trapped inside the forced role of a god. If you enjoyed this video, consider leaving a like and subscribing to the channel. There are plenty more videos breaking down all things Invincible for you to check out, so stick around. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.